Thanks for checking out the I Am More Than podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Wessel, a former Miss Arizona USA, professional model, self-acceptance advocate, hype girl, and founder of More Than Inc. In this podcast, we talk about the things that actually matter, from mental health to health and wellness, body image and confidence, and social issues. We're here to uplift, educate, inspire, and grow together. Each week, we'll feature a unique and incredible woman to share her story of how she's so much more than whatever you may know her as. We'll laugh, cry, and feel inspired in every episode, and trust me, there's no topic off limits. Whether you're commuting, working, or enjoying a glass of wine, we're so honored to have you here, and I'm excited to welcome you to the More Than movement. We're just getting started. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're kicking it off with an incredible woman who's a mental health advocate using her voice to destigmatize the conversation and help others feel less alone. She's a well-known model who's worked with brands like CoverGirl, Adidas, Mango, and was a 2019 Playboy Playmate. But modeling is only a fraction of who she is. With a degree in psychology and a passion for mental health, she's used her platform to be an advocate while providing resources and tools for anyone else who's struggling. She launched her own digital mental health space called the Remedy Platform to specifically provide mental health resources and support to Black, Indigenous people of color, as well as the LGBTQ+ community. In this episode, we chat all about her modeling experience, her mental health journey, embracing natural beauty, self-acceptance, police brutality, climate change, and so much more. She's so multifaceted and inspiring. It's my honor to introduce you to my friend, Gilly Chan. Welcome to the I Am More Than podcast. I am so excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm just excited to see you again. We've only met each other once at a job in New York. It's my first job that I had done in New York. I think it was with
our first jobs. I think I remember that.
It was, and it was Swimsuits for All, right?
We were kind of like, what's happening? We don't understand.
And that was such a weird job too.
It was, and I was like, is this what modeling is like? I don't know.
It was so confusing. I remember you and I walking to the elevator and being like, well, at least we made a friend out of this whole thing.
We were grateful for it, but we were like in a closet in bathing suits pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But I loved getting to know you then and then just following you on social media and seeing how your career is just taken off. And I think you're doing so many incredible things. So I'm excited for our audience to get to know you a little bit better. So tell me all about how you got into the modeling industry. What has your journey been like?
I would say it was an accident. I grew up in New York. I had just come back from studying abroad in London, and I was kind of just feeling lost and working in restaurants and stores and just really sick of that lifestyle. So I went on Instagram. I had no following and I found actually a girl that had my same body proportions. I didn't think because I'm in between that I could model for plus size or straight size. So I found her and I saw her agency, which is my agency now, Jag Models. And I just sent in a photo and it was just like this weird headshot that someone on the street had randomly taken of me. And they called me in. They're like, "You want to sign with us?" I was like, I don't know what that means, but okay. Yeah.
That's amazing. And that was what, 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah. 5. Oh my God. 2017. Yeah.
Wow. And now you've modeled for some major brands. You were even a Playmate in last year, correct? 2019?
Yeah, so 2 years ago, which is crazy because it's 2021. I keep on forgetting because
2020 didn't count. So we're just going to say last year. What has your journey been like in this industry? Like you said, you didn't know that you could even be represented because in between size models really didn't have a place before Jag Models started representing them. So what has it been like?
So I came in so naive, but I think that was to my benefit because I had no expectations. And I think a lot of girls come in, they have these huge expectations about how modeling should go and they get disappointed. So I'm kind of grateful that I went in and I was just like, whatever happens, happens. I'm super grateful for whatever I'm doing. I started booking stuff and I was so shocked because I was like, oh, I'm not that experienced. I was just trying to be nice on every job. And I think that's a lesson that models don't really get taught is how to socialize and make those connections. Which is super important because when you have those consistent clients that really vouch for you, they recommend you to other clients or you'll know people in the industry. And that's kind of how I made my way through. And, I have great agents who are now very close friends and my friends who I've met through the agency and other agencies have just like gotten me through and kind of helped me find my voice. And I think I'm at a point in my career where I want to have a voice and I want to show people who I am. And that's kind of the next step in my journey.
I love that. And I think that we're finally getting to a place where models aren't just represented on a board and don't have a voice anymore. You really get to be the entire brand and the entire personality. And really leading up to where you are now, you come across as an insanely confident person, exactly sure of who you are.
Surprising for me.
Well, I've learned everybody's got a journey. Hear about your confidence journey and kind of what led you up to finding your voice now at this point in your life.
I think it came from kind of built up emotions. I always, as a kid, was very self-conscious. I was super tall in high school, middle school. And I was like one of like very few brown people at my school with my hair, which is huge, which I absolutely love now. But back then I was very like, I wanted to make myself small because I was such a big person, big, whatever that means.
Yeah.
That I kind of like belittled myself. And that also came with like doubting my own intelligence, doubting my ability to speak on behalf of things that I'm passionate about. So it kind of, there came a breaking point where, I would say it was like 2 or 3 years ago. Since I grew up in New York City, I know a lot of people from my past and they kept on like seeing me in this light. And I was like, no, I'm way more than that. So then I just started being like more vocal on social media. I had great friends who were my inspirations that kind of had a voice and they taught me how to have a voice too. And through that, I just kind of stopped caring as much what people think about me and broke through that shell. And it's been really empowering. And I feel like I have way more agency now. I'm still on this journey. I still have a lot more I want to say, but it's going to take me some time to fully like formulate everything that I have in my head.
It's really hard to bring it all together in like a cohesive way, which I think is the coolest part is that you're so multifaceted. You're interested in so many different things. And I think it's really cool that you're not afraid to use your voice on your own platform, because I can relate to just growing up and kind of feeling like you need to conform to somebody else's idea of what you should be, what you should say, what you should think. And I've heard you talk about that in the past and just growing up in a way that you felt like you really needed to almost conform just to try and fit in. When do you think you were able to really break through that? Or are you realizing it now looking back, or did you know it when you were going through it that that's what you were experiencing?
Modeling is such a powerful, like empowering job. And I'm so grateful for that because when I started modeling, I started getting that like outward gratification that as a kid, I don't think I was really told, being tall and mixed race and with huge hair. So when I finally was like, hey, actually, people really do want to hear what I have to say and people do think I'm beautiful, it just opened up all these doors. And it really just like let me see myself for who I am rather than trying to change who I am.
I love that. That's really cool. I heard you talking about this it was a poem that you wrote for Abercrombie.
Yeah.
Such an incredibly well-written, incredible poem. Do you write poetry?
I don't. That project was a first for me. And it's funny because I started that project last year in June and it came out like February, I think. So it was like all these months of like building up and thinking, oh my God, like, are people going to think that I'm not qualified to talk about this or to share my story or what's going to happen, on the internet. And I mean, I'm so proud that I got to do that because that was really just like directly my voice. And I've never done a video essay like that. And that's something I want to do more in the future. So yeah, it came from like reflecting on the younger me, as I said, like that insecure me, that girl who wanted to make herself smaller and kind of coming out as this woman who feels a lot of empowerment, especially now, to use my voice. And even if like there's not a million people who are paying attention, I got like at least 10 amazing messages from people that made me think, okay, this is worth it. Even if like only one person is affected by this.
Isn't it cool when you decide to just be vulnerable about your story and suddenly people you don't even know feel empowered by hearing your story?
Yeah, it's very weird to me. It's like, it's not even people who look like me. It's people like from all different like socioeconomic backgrounds, races, ages that have come forward and said, hey, like you talking about mental illness has really helped me. And I didn't even think I could affect like different kinds of people like that. I thought my demographic was going to be like mixed race girls that were my age, but it's very much like a plethora of different people, which I love.
One thing that I'm really coming to terms and really realizing through doing this podcast is that mental health affects everybody in different ways. No matter where you come from, no matter what you look like, you're impacted to some extent. And you've really been very vocal about mental health, which is one of the main reasons I had to have you on this platform and talk all about what you're doing. So can you walk me through a little bit about what your mental health journey has looked like?
I think, ever since I was really young, like probably around 12 years old, I knew that psychology and mental health was going to be a huge part of my life. That came through my own experiences. I've dealt with OCD, anxiety, depression since I was young. And a lot of people in my family have as well, but it's always been a very taboo subject. Mm-hmm. So I felt like I was the one in the family who was kind of like destined to be loud about this, even if my family didn't understand it. So it came from like a necessity to talk about emotions and feelings and kind of like just my love and interest for psychology. And actually, I graduated with my degree 2 years ago in psychology, and I want to eventually get a master's. So That's always something that's going to be a part of my life.
That's really cool. And you had said something, even if your family didn't understand why you were speaking up about it. Mm-hmm. Do you relate to the idea of how a lot of people feel like I should just kind of suffer because it's embarrassing by myself? Like, why do you have to talk about it? Is that something that you've heard a lot throughout your family or in friend groups or anything?
For sure. Especially coming from, especially my Jamaican side, I would say, but also like my dad's Chinese side. It's the same, but very different in the ways that my different sides of the family have gone about mental health. And I think it was kind of like, because my grandma immigrated here from Jamaica. It was like, don't complain, be grateful for what you have. Kind of just like that mentality of kind of tough love and just fighting through it, which I now know is like more detrimental in the long run. And then like my dad's side of the family, and I can't speak for all Asian cultures, but I know a lot of Chinese people feel like it's like a disappointment to say that you're struggling.
Almost like it's viewed as like weakness.
Yeah, a weakness, a failure, stuff like that. And I kind of wanted to like dispel that thinking, because I can see how it was damaging, and it still is damaging to the older members of my family, to people who feel like they can't speak up and they have to kind of swallow it. And just like the media representation of mental health and mental illness, like we see Meghan Markle and how people are kind of saying that she's lying, kind of, being really mean about the fact that she came out saying that she was struggling, even though she's super privileged. It's like anyone at any level can struggle. And I think that's what everyone should know.
I actually love that you brought up that analogy, because watching her interview where she was so vulnerable and opening up, and I know it helps so many people, but I don't think I was expecting the other side of people saying like, you have no reason to feel that way with all your privilege. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a beautiful point that you made, that it affects everybody. Like, it doesn't matter where you come from or what you have. Mental health help has been very inaccessible to a lot of people. And I think there's a lot of platforms now that are coming forward to be able to be utilized. It's not as expensive as therapy, should I say. So what are some tools that have really helped you on your mental health journey?
So I am a big proponent of online therapy. Even before the pandemic, I was doing it because as a model, I travel a lot. It's hard to be in one place and to be consistent with anything. Like, I don't know if people know this about us, but like, it's hard to commit to classes. It's hard to commit to anything outside of modeling because you could be called right away. So I use Talkspace personally, and it's a sliding scale. So you can choose like how much you really want to pay, but it's more on the expensive side if you don't have insurance. So there's also a lot of online therapy sources. I did a Playboy article about it. There's a whole list of them that you can find accessible therapy.
Yeah, I saw that you had done that for Playboy, and I'd love to hear more about that, because I think that what you did for Playboy, I'm sure, was so liberating. And then to be able to bring in another aspect to the magazine and being able to talk about mental health, I think that's such a cool way to utilize that platform.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the sexiest topic.
But I love that you're able to talk about it on a very sexy platform.
Yeah. And I am so grateful for the Playboy team, because they're really like huge supporters of all the Playmates and all of their like alternative like ventures and all their passions. And I came to them with the idea of writing this, and they were like, "Oh my God, we love it." And they're super just supportive, and I couldn't be more happy to be a part of this movement that is so supportive of its, playmates, and they're really pushing the bar on what Playboy is, and with their new articles, I think that like they're appealing to so many people, and they're really getting into like the nitty gritty of articles, and I just love them for that.
How did Playboy come to be about? Did they reach out to you through your agency? Was that something that you were like manifesting them as a client? What was that experience like?
It's the same with modeling, and I don't want to sound ungrateful for anything or like life came easy to me, because it's also been hard in the process. But they reached out to me through Instagram, and it was so weird because at the time I had probably like 5,000 followers, and it was just this random like, I feel like it was meant to be, but I was not expecting it at all. It's not something that I was manifesting. It was like a very big surprise.
That's
Yeah.
really cool that it's almost like you get to stay in your own lane doing what you want to be doing and just let modeling kind of come to you. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just so grateful for the industry. I mean, it's been hard during COVID, and a lot has changed. I think that's why I've been more inclined to speak about mental health right now, because
Yeah.
work's been slow and it's been hard, and a lot of people are losing their jobs right now and having to rethink their lives. I have plenty of friends in their like mid to late 30s who are like, I am not working. I have to think about my life and career now. And that's a really hard thing, but it's also like liberating to find different parts of yourself.
Definitely. And I'd love to just talk about how you've kind of maintained positive mental health throughout COVID, because like you said, maybe even people that didn't really struggle with mental health are at that place now because we've gone through something as a country, as a world, a nation that we've never experienced before. And I think there's a lot of people that really don't know how to label what they're feeling, whether it's anxiety or depression or any of the other things that people with mental illness struggle with. Have you noticed that you've had to try and check yourself a little bit more throughout the last year, or how have you been handling the pandemic?
I would say I've had to check myself more than ever in my life before. Not only did the pandemic happen for me, but I lost one of my closest friends at the beginning of the pandemic. And then my partner had a family emergency. So it was like, and I was also long distance. So my partner was in England and I was in the US, and it was very hard to see each other. So on top of all of that, it was like, this was the first time in my life I felt like out of control with my anxiety and depression. And I really had to utilize tools like I never thought I would have to, like taking antidepressants and really doing a lot of therapy, like seriously utilizing all of my grounding techniques, because I really felt like everything was falling apart this year. And I can now say that I'm at a point where I've gotten myself through that, and I've learned so much about myself in that process. Even though it was really hard, I'm grateful to have learned those lessons in my life. And now I know my body more than ever, because mental health is not only just how you feel, it's physical. It's very much like I started to get hives for the first time in my life, and I didn't know that anxiety could cause hives. And just like all the things you ingest, everything that you eat, everything that you consume affects you. And so that whole like mind body balance is something that I had to learn this year.
And you've talked about grounding techniques. Can you walk me through that a little bit?
Sure. So I started off with using an acupuncture mat. Acupuncture has been a really great tool for me. You can buy them on Amazon. They're like a mat with like little prickly plastic things that you kind of lay on. And I would do my meditation on that, because a lot of people who feel dissociation that comes with anxiety have a hard time just feeling in general. So to be on something that is it doesn't hurt, but it's definitely a lot of pressure, and it goes into certain pressure points on your body. That was one of my first grounding tools. And then I would just do more consistent meditation. I took a lot of baths, which were anything that like helped you balance the overstimulation that comes with anxiety was something that I used as a grounding tool. So a lot of aromatherapy, baths, anything that had to do with acupuncture, exercise, those really helped me.
I love those. On top of just being in a pandemic and everything that comes with it, we've been rocked with social issues. And I know you've been very vocal about it as well. Do you think that's another thing that was really playing into the increase in anxiety?
Oh, for sure. I mean, especially in New York City where, the protests were going outside of my apartment door. I could hear it every day pretty much. I participated. It was scary. The police were scary. It was a very scary time, but it also felt like I was so happy to be a part of history in that way, to stand up for something that I've always believed in and to actually take initiative with the people in my life. And I ended up distancing myself from a lot of people who I felt weren't supportive, weren't aware. And it really raised my standards for who I let into my life, which is a good thing at the end of the day.
I think there's a lot of people that, even though we've seen and been exposed to so much over the last year, I feel like for a lot of people, they almost woke up for the first time and they were on fire, and they were on fire along with everybody else that is demanding change. But then there's another half of people that just want it to go away. They don't want to educate themselves. They don't want to fully understand what's going on. And I think that's why it's so important to continuously have conversations like this, because it's not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important that people keep using their voices to realize, like, whether you're distant from a friend or not, that doesn't mean you're not going to hear about it anymore. Mm-hmm. So how did you kind of cut some of those ties or explain that to people in your life before having to distance yourself?
To be honest, at the beginning, I was being somewhat petty, I guess is the right word. I really felt like this was the time to call people out. And,
yep.
Because I went to high school in New York, I was like, people from my high school, you were a part of this problem. I actually posted that in my story. And I felt like this was a time to hold people accountable. And I was seeing so many people just ignore it or just kind of do like performative activism. And it was really bothering me. So I started confronting people, which if my friends who know me know that I'm like the least confrontational person ever. Like I hate confrontation so much, but I felt such an urge to, and such like a fire underneath me to actually speak up. And it was important to me that I started confronting people. I started being like, hey, I see that you're not, being supportive. I know that, and social media is tricky with being an activist. It's hard. It's hard to find that in between. But I didn't see any effort at all. And these were people that I grew up with and that know me and know my family. And I was kind of like, this is not good enough for me. Like, why? And then I would get the answers for them and it wouldn't be like a good enough reason. Oh. So then I was kind of like, well, this is my time to move on. And maybe we're just going down different paths. And yeah, it's a part of life.
It's a very natural part of life. But I do think that we're still in a place where it's very necessary to call people out. Mm-hmm. I feel like if you are choosing to be ignorant, that's only going to get you so far.
Yeah.
I feel like it's really time that if you haven't wanted to educate yourself up until this point, it's not too late, but you got to start. Because a lot of stuff is happening. And I feel like even in the last 2 weeks, there's been an overwhelming amount of things that are happening with a lot of violence, a lot of just hatefulness, that I think these conversations at least open the door to help people understand that there really are people behind these experiences that are crying for help.
For sure.
What were those protests like in New York?
Growing up in New York, I've never seen anything like it. Never, ever, ever. It almost felt like it was a different world. I was proud. I was proud of my city, and I was proud of the people who were protesting, because it seemed like a lot of people were on the streets of all different backgrounds protesting. And it made me feel very emotional, but like, I was living near Barclays Center, the big,
in Brooklyn.
And we were protesting at night. And then when I got to the Barclays Center, we were met with like a line of riot police with batons and guns and shields. And we were very, very peaceful. We're kneeling on the ground and just looking in the face of those police officers in my city. It was just, there's so much anger and there was so much like hurt in that they were treating us like we were criminals, even though it was so peaceful. And we were literally sitting on the ground. And then I decided to leave because I felt scared for my safety. And then in the morning, I watched the news, and the news said like a bunch of protesters had been beaten by police in that very exact location that I was. So it was it was kind of like a light bulb had turned on, because it doesn't feel good to not trust institutions that are supposed to protect you. And that's why these protests started, because Black people don't feel safe around police. But to see that in person and to see that like outward hatred and brutality towards people who were so peaceful, it was just, it was a really bad feeling.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
And I feel like we see it on the news, but I don't think it hits home until you know somebody who's been involved and very much affected by this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think knowing that you were able to see it up close and see these police officers, where prior to this, these are the people that are supposed to be protecting you in New York City, that you see on the streets when you're walking around, that like they're put there to protect you. I don't know what it's going to take for people to be able to trust those institutions at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm really hoping that we come to a peaceful understanding, but I don't know.
I think this summer, well, last summer was a breaking point for sure. And this has been something Black people have known for 100+ years. But the fact that it was so widely publicized, and I think like COVID was the perfect storm, because people were inside and kind of, they had so much time to think and be angry about this. I don't know if that trust will come back like anytime soon. And I think it's going to take a lot of changes in policing and the government to even like have one inkling of that trust back or of safety. And until then, like, I don't have an answer. Yeah.
And you're still living in New York right now. Are you guys still in Brooklyn?
So I'm in Los Angeles right now because we're looking to see if we want to move to have but we were just in Brooklyn. Yeah.
Okay. Is LA a lot different? Are you feeling it?
I mean, I'm not used to the sunshine. Like, I think growing up on the East Coast, like when you see a palm tree, you're immediately like, it's vacation here, it's paradise. And I think we're kind of in that halo.
In that phase.
Yeah, for sure.
Even though COVID has kind of felt like it's been a year, but it feels like it's been a lot longer than a year, that we're starting to see a little bit of the light at the end of the tunnel. And I know that modeling's turning around too, and that things are picking up. Are you noticing that just your work is picking up a lot more?
Yes and no. I mean, it's a lot different because we were so used to traveling everywhere, and that's still not a possibility. It's not a possibility to like go to London for a day and then come back, or go to even Florida or Ohio. It's like people don't want to fly models in. So it's kind of like you have to build up your clientele in the city that you're in. And that's a big difference from how it used to be. Hopefully that will end, because it's stifling a lot of creatives. It's stifling a lot of models' careers. But for the meantime, all we can do is, be grateful for the work that we do have. And yeah.
Totally. And I've seen a lot of different companies wanting to make sure that their models, their campaigns, or everything are a lot more diverse and inclusive. Do you feel like that's something that you've had to struggle with in this industry? Do you feel like you've had to be vocal about that in the industry, or do you feel like we're actually making progress?
Only once have I felt kind of uncomfortable, I would say.
Okay.
And that was mostly by hair and makeup artists, not the clients. I've never
Interesting.
felt like clients have directly, well, also because I'm, light skinned with my hair texture, I'm very much palatable to a lot of different clients. But for me, it's only been from hair and makeup artists that I've felt that direct racism.
Interesting. And I wonder why, knowing how many people they work with and how educated they should be on working with every type of model, I wonder why they would be in a position where that they would make anyone feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I've just been told like my hair is too hard to deal with, or microaggressions that make you feel lesser than. And especially being an in-between model, I've come on sets where the straight size model have all these clothes that are beautiful, and you get like one dress with paisleys or like a muumuu or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't make you feel good. That doesn't make you feel like you're a model or a professional, even, because you're in this like tent of a dress next to nice clothes. So I've been lucky to not feel targeted like that, but I do know a lot of people who have, and it does exist. I've mostly dealt with microaggressions that I've either brushed off or told my agents about, and it's been dealt with.
It's good that you have people that are in a position that they are willing to protect you no matter what. I mean, that's what agents are for. So I'm glad they are doing that. And you even mentioned at the very beginning about just growing up and dealing with some of your insecurities that you've been able to embrace through modeling. And you had mentioned your hair. And I would just love to hear about that whole process and you coming to fully just embracing exactly the way you are.
It was a struggle. So throughout high school, I relaxed my hair. I used chemicals. I wore long weave extensions or whatever you want to call it. So I didn't even know what my hair texture was until I was probably 21.
Wow.
And from then on, it was like this whole journey of, and I know a lot of people who have gone natural have dealt with this, of transitioning and all those phases and like it looking kind of crazy. And then you just have to be patient and wearing braids. And finally, in the past 4 years, it's like I have all this hair that I never knew how to deal with or style or, how it even looked. And I love it so much. And I never like straightening my hair now. I think it looks funny, which is really strange because I used to do that every single day. So yeah, it's just like this. I feel so proud to have this hair. I think it's just so me.
I love it. Do you feel like you had a similar journey with just your body confidence journey? You've talked about being a middle-sized model. Do you feel like you had to really try and overcome that early in your teens or even your early 20s?
So I was always an athlete. I think my body image was different in the way that I was always very strong, but I was always big. I had really strong thighs that were always big and big shoulders. So I think a part of that was kind of embracing that strongness, embracing like how strong my body is and loving that. Because in high school, all I wanted to do was be small. I just wanted to fit. I think I said this in the Abercrombie video. I just wanted to fit into Abercrombie clothes and look like Abercrombie models and, look like the white girls in my class, with straight hair and like tiny bodies. And I was always big with not straight hair.
Well, I'm glad that you've been able to just fully embrace that. I think that everybody has gone through an interesting journey with their confidence. And I don't know that a lot of people, that journey has come full circle. And I think a lot of people just keep living their lives in a very self-conscious state. And I don't think we have to do that. So I think it's really cool to just talk about trying to learn to just love yourself as you are, because it is possible, but you have to put in a lot of work to get there.
Oh, yeah. But when you come out the other end, it's just so amazing. And I feel like your outlook on life changes.
Yeah.
And, my philosophy on body positivity is like, you shouldn't have to think about it. You shouldn't have to think about your body. And that's body positivity. I think it's called, what is it called? There's a word for it.
There is a word for it. And I'm trying to think of what it is.
I'll find it out.
I know we need put it in the show notes.
But that's my philosophy, is like not having to think about how you look every day, just being and just living as you and figuring out different parts of yourself that don't have to do with your physical appearance.
How'd you get there?
I think it just came through just being like, this is me, this is who I am. And as I said, I think modeling gave me a lot of empowerment to know that I was beautiful, to know that I, had a great voice and something to say. And off that, I didn't have to think so much about it. I didn't have to think about, do I look pretty? Like, do people find me pretty? I already knew that because I was getting hired and I was, on the covers of stuff. And yeah, so I got to explore the parts of myself.
What have been your very favorite clients to work for?
That is so hard.
You can give me like top 5.
Obviously Playboy, because they're amazing and it changed my career. Who else? This sounds super like funny to hear because I don't think a lot of people would say this, but I love my catalog clients because we travel together and we have the best time and we've like almost become a family. So sets like that, where the people you work with so many times that you become a family, is like what makes me happy in this job, because I feel like a part of something. I'm super grateful to, have done the CoverGirls and Max and all those huge clients, but like the sets that everyone, that's like the OGs. Those are like the homies.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And your mental health platform that you started, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So it's been a project on and on that I've wanted to do for the past 3 years. And I've just been going through how I want to see it grow. But basically, it's a platform for Black and Indigenous people of color to talk about these very specific mental health issues that we have and talk about those nuances of being a person of color and talking about mental illness, because it's very different in the sphere of mental health and wellness and self-care, which has traditionally been very white dominated. I think that there's all of these subsections and intersections that people don't get to voice. So I wanted to have a platform for that. And I'm constantly finding people to talk to and building it up. And it's gonna go somewhere someday. It's just gonna take a while.
Well, you're making a change. You're making an impact and you're raising awareness to something that desperately needs to be talked about. So I'm proud of you for that.
Well, I love your podcast and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Watching you build it over the past couple of years. I remember like peeping it a couple of years ago. And I'm excited to see it all come together for you.
Thank you. Me too. I'm excited to have people like you on the show because I just feel like our listeners don't get that opportunity to just have a candid conversation with the people that they're looking up to on social media. So it's a really cool way for them to just get to know who you are. I don't think there's a lot of other ways to approach that right now, which I think is why being in this digital world, especially during COVID, has just really made us feel connected,
I was doing an interview a couple of months ago and the interviewer said, "Oh, I love how you're not media trained." And I was like, "Is that a bad thing?" And she's like, "No, you just say whatever's on your mind and like, don't like second think about it to make it sound better." I'm like, it's just me. I want everyone to know like this is actually me talking without any guards up, and which is a good thing because
yes. It's a very good thing because people want this version of you. And you talked about on your platform just having a voice and bringing awareness to the things that are important to you. What are some other things other than mental health that you really feel like you want to start diving into and really vocalizing over the next future of social media?
I think on my journey of just being more aware of climate change, my partner and I stopped eating meat, and there's a new documentary on Netflix called Fish Conspiracy. And we're like, oh man, like now
I'm nervous. I know, I'm nervous to watch it.
So that's definitely something that I want to be more involved in, is thinking about the planet and being less of a consumer, especially working in a very, very capitalist job. We basically sell things to people. And so I think it's important for us to have an impact on like speaking about climate change and being more aware of how we impact the earth too.
Absolutely. How did you get educated on climate change? Were you watching specific documentaries? Because I know a lot of people that they want to know more about it, but they don't really know where to turn or where to find their information from. What was kind of the beginning of your journey in finding out more about climate change?
So I think I've watched almost every climate change documentary there is on
Get it, girl.
Amazon Prime, Netflix, Hulu, every single one that's not like very low budget I've watched. I love Al Gore. I think he's great. And Greta Thunberg, she has a lot of great information. She also has a documentary. And I think what kind of triggered me and my partner was just going to beaches and seeing how much trash there was on the beach. So in the Fishspiracy documentary, I don't want to ruin it for you, they say that commercial fishing is like one of the biggest impacts on our oceans. So just kind of changing that narrative and giving people the facts of like, hey, yes, we have kind of a responsibility in this, but we really need to lobby these big companies because they're having the biggest impact. And they're trying to put the blame on the consumer when it's actually these companies who are the ones producing this stuff. And so I think holding companies accountable for their impact rather than the consumer is what's going to change all of this for us.
Okay, now I have to go watch.
Yeah, it's like hard to watch. You're going to be like, oh man, I can't eat fish anymore.
God, I'll text you right after and be like, dang it.
I know. Yeah.
It's important. I think that even the uncomfortable things, it's good to be educated about it. And then you can make a decision from there. But if you don't know the information, you don't know what you're doing.
We're so lucky to be in this time and age of having so much information available to us.
Yep.
I don't know, like even when we were kids, like I had like a startup computer with dial-up and all that stuff. There was probably like 2 or 3 articles on this stuff that were of substance. And now we have so many movies and YouTube. And so there's really no excuse.
There's information everywhere, which I think that's one of the many blessings in social media. you've done a great job of growing your social media and of talking about the stuff that really matters.
Way too much. I had a lot
No.
of information that was coming out.
No, I love it. That's exactly why I asked you on. Well, thank you so much for giving me so much of your time and for just diving into a million topics with me. I appreciate you riding the wave with me.
It's so nice seeing you full circle from our first job to here we are in our careers. It's nice.
I know. Look at us go. Well, we'll make sure that we just keep overlapping.
Yeah, what was it, 5 years?
Yeah, I'll see you in 5 years.
If you're loving the I Am More Than podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review. It helps us so much. And if you haven't already, follow us on Insta at More Than Inc. for all things inspo, More Than merch, and soon we'll be posting info about our in-person meetups. We're so thankful to have you part of this community and are always here to remind you that you are so much more than. We'll see you next week.